All right. We are Emerald Creative Content, and we're so excited to talk about how to plan your small business website rebuild today. This webinar is meant to be a practical guide on planning the right approach to your website, which might be a rebuild or it might be a refresh. Not everything needs a rebuild, so we'll talk more about how to determine what the best approach is for you and everything that you need to know before you spend a single dollar, because it can be an expensive investment to rebuild or refresh your website. So it's really important to have all of the necessary information before you get started. So that is what we're going to be talking about today. My name is Amanda Kern, and I will be your host and your facilitator today. I'm the CEO and founding partner of Emerald Creative Content. I founded Emerald in 2021 after a 9-year career as a middle school English teacher. So if I give off middle school English teacher vibes, that is why. But yes, so we have been helping small businesses around Columbus and beyond with their search engine optimization, with website rebuild, social media, and now AEO, which is AI engine optimization. And so we're thinking about all of these things. Basically, how can we make sure that your website rebuild is everything that your business needs to generate leads and be discoverable? And so those are some of the things that we'll be thinking about in this webinar. All right. So in one sentence or even one word, I would love to hear from everybody. What is one thing that frustrates you about your current website? And there's just a small group here with us today. So if you just want to come off of mute and introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what frustrates you about your current website, I would love to hear from you.
I can start. I think that
I'm Grace, and I would say things that frustrate me about like websites is that like when they're really slow or like when photos don't load really fast, I think is like the most frustrating thing, especially if your business is like a very visual, like heavy business. Like if you do like say like photography services or something like that, or even like things that I think I notice too is like if I'm looking at a website and I want to see photos of like say like a restaurant or something, if it like takes a really long time to load, I think that's one of the biggest things that I notice.
Yeah, slow websites are really frustrating. Ashley, what were you going to say?
That it can get hard when you've been in business for a while to kind of Frankenstein all your pages together, and just like you start to realize that you want to add a page or take away a page, and it can get a little bit messy, and that can get frustrating. So
that's definitely true. Awesome. Thanks for sharing. Edward, anything that frustrates you about your current website that you want to share before we move on?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, very well. So I have about 10 different businesses and websites, and I try to use WordPress and watch some YouTube videos to do a few stuff, but they are not where I want them to be. And that is why I think it's important to learn from experts so that I can improve the graphics and how best I can come on top.
Yeah.
So that's basically about it.
Sounds like you're managing a lot of different websites, and WordPress especially can be really challenging. So yeah, when you've got a lot on your plate and you're dealing with a difficult platform like WordPress, I can see how that would be really frustrating. Awesome. Thanks everyone for sharing. So there are really 4 phases when it comes to website design. And most of us are probably in phase 1, which is the readiness phase, where we're trying to figure out what exactly we need. What is the issue with the website? And, you know, how do you want to move forward? Is it a rebuild? Is it a refresh? Or is it just a smaller fix? Once you figure out, you know, whether you need a rebuild or a refresh, it's time to start getting prepared. And there's quite a bit that needs to be done first before you start reaching out to designers and thinking about hiring a designer. So The preparedness phase is thinking about what's the strategy, right? We can't just throw up a website and expect people to convert into customers right away. You've got to have some type of strategy for getting people to convert. There's certain assets that you'll need. We'll talk through the list of all the different assets that you need to build a website. There's gathering access to all the things. Your web designer is going to need access to like where your DNS is hosted, where's your domain hosted, your current website platform. And then you're going to have already made some decisions ahead of time in order for your designer to move forward with the project. Once you are done preparing, it's time to start thinking about the investment. So once you have an idea of the number of pages you want, you've got all the copy written, you understand how complex you need the forms and maybe some scheduling things, maybe you're doing e-commerce, then you can start getting realistic about the actual investment. Maybe you need help even gathering some of those assets, and that can be part of how you're thinking about the investment, is getting maybe some help with getting some of those assets together. Part of the investment isn't just monetary, it's also time. So we'll talk a little bit about timeline as well as ongoing costs after your initial investment of the website redesign or refresh is over. And then finally, we're going to talk through what makes someone a great fit. So, what are some of the things that you need to be thinking about as you are considering different options? What are some of the questions you need to be asking? Because you should definitely be interviewing multiple different options before you dive in. All right, so I would love to hear from some of our friends in the chat. Where are you currently in your website journey? So if you just want to choose one letter, A, B, C, D, or E, that best represents where you currently are in your website journey, and drop it in the chat. Are you just exploring? Maybe you're just here to learn. Are you really hoping to rebuild within the next 6 to 12 months? Maybe you're actively comparing different agencies or designers. Maybe you've already got some proposals. Maybe you're in the middle of the rebuild and you're here just to make sure that you didn't miss anything. Or maybe you're totally unsure whether you even need a rebuild or not. So just drop a letter in the chat and let us know where you're at. All right, it looks like Ashley and Grace are hoping to rebuild in the next 6 to 12 months. Definitely. If you are thinking of rebuilding in the next 6 to 12 months, now is the time to get started. Awesome. It looks like Edward's on the same page as well, because it takes a little while to gather all of the things that you need in order to give to your designer. And then also you want to take your time interviewing agencies. You don't want to feel pressured to just hire someone because you're in a time crunch. So if you're hoping to rebuild in the next 6 to 12 months, this is a great webinar for you because we're going to cover all the things that you need to be thinking about for it. Awesome. All right, so let's talk about phase 1 of the website rebuild or refresh process, and that is readiness. That is where we all are. If we're at the point where we're thinking about a website redesign in the next 6 to 12 months, we're most likely in the readiness phase where we're trying to figure out, hey, do we need to rebuild, refresh, or is there a smaller fix? So let's talk about how you can figure out what exactly you need to be doing. A beautiful website is not always a useful website. So Grace, who is in the webinar with us today, she actually has a fine art background. And one of the things that we were talking about is how in her art school, her professors were like, you just need your website to look beautiful. You definitely want a beautiful website, but there are 3 other probably more important jobs that your website should be doing for you. So I want you to think in your mind, yes or no, is your website doing these 3 things, and give yourself a point for each time that you say yes in order to determine whether or not you need a redesign or a refresh. So let's talk about job number 1. Is your website helping you get found? Yes or no? The way that you can answer this question is when you look at your analytics, are you getting organic traffic from Google or from Yahoo or from any type of search engine? Maybe it's even an AI search engine. If you're not getting organic traffic and it's all direct traffic, then your website is not helping you get found. Part of what helps your website get found is if you've got clear positioning on your website. Do you explain exactly why customers should choose you? Are you using the right keywords? Are you explaining the right unique selling points? And then do you have useful content on your website? Blogging helps your website get found. So sometimes if you like your overall website, but maybe you just haven't been blogging, the answer doesn't necessarily need to be a rebuild. It could just be, hey, I need to refresh some of the content in my blog. So that is question number one. Is your website actually helping you get found organically in search? Yes or no? Job number two that your website should be doing for you, is it helping build trust? How websites build trust? Basically, the test is, could a visitor recognize the website as yours, even without your logo or your business name on it? And so some of the subconscious things that build trust are your colors consistent on social media and in email and on your website, and even across your website on different pages. Are you using the same colors? Are you using the same fonts? Every time you post content anywhere online, you should be using the same set of fonts and colors. Textures and imagery. You should have original imagery on your websites to build trust. People can spot a stock photo, and so can Google. Google can spot a stock photo as well by looking at the metadata in the photo. So you want to make sure that you've got photos of the people in the business that people will be interacting with, and or photos of the team behind the scenes. And then lastly is your voice, your mood, your tone. If you are conversational and silly on social media, and then somebody goes to your website and it feels very formal and very stuffy, there's a disconnect there. So that's another way that we build trust, is just by, answering the question, is my website consistent with how I look and how I feel outside of my own website? Second is credible proof. Does your website have case studies? Does it have customer testimonials from real customers where they're reviewing your products and services? This is more important than ever, especially as we start thinking about Google search and AI engine search optimization. You need these customer testimonials. They're really important. If you're in a licensed industry, you need to have information about your licensure and your education, as well as any professional affiliations that you have, especially if you are in a medical niche or a mental health niche or a finance niche. This is especially important. And then, are you building up what's called your EEAT? Does your website demonstrate your expertise, your experience, your authoritativeness, particularly through thought leadership? So you should be publishing as the person who owns the business or the face of the business. You need to pick who the thought leader will be. Often it is the business owner. And you need to be publishing your expertise. So if your website is not building trust, there might be an opportunity for a refresh or a rebuild. The last job that your website should be doing for you, and this is the most important one, is creating action. Is your website generating leads or revenue? If the answer is no, you're not getting at least weekly calls, form submissions, purchases, or bookings from your website, then your website's not doing its job. Sometimes it can be an issue of navigation. Maybe you just need to refresh how users flow through your website and find things. That would be an opportunity for a refresh rather than a rebuild. It could be an issue of the language is not compelling enough, in which case you probably need to work with a copywriter to either refresh or rebuild the content on the site. Sometimes it's an issue of just not having a good call to action. We like to use both primary and secondary calls to action. Some type of buy now or book now is great. But oftentimes the first time someone visits your site, they're not quite ready to take that first step. And so having a secondary call to action, such as, hey, download this guide in exchange for your email, or join our newsletter, or book a free consultation. This can be a great way to start a conversation with somebody who isn't quite ready to purchase. So 3 jobs. Is your website helping you get found? Is your website building trust? Is your website generating action? If you answered yes to at least 2 to 3 of these 2 jobs, then you probably don't need a rebuild. You might just need a refresh. A refresh is appropriate if you like the platform you're on. So if you're on WordPress and you love WordPress, great. You might not need a full rebuild. If you hate WordPress, or you're on Shopify, you hate Shopify, you will need a rebuild. There's no way to just like port everything over automatically to a new platform. You will probably need a rebuild if you are looking to move platforms. But if you like the platform you're on, then a refresh is great. If your navigation and page structure are pretty sound, you're not thinking that you need a huge overhaul in the actual like structure of the site, a refresh could work for you. Maybe your messaging needs a little refinement. Maybe your photos, your case studies, or the style needs to be updated. Maybe you need some better calls to action. All of those things it would probably be appropriate for you to have a refresh. Now, if the structure of your site no longer fits your business, maybe the way that you've organized the content on your site no longer works, maybe the platform you're on doesn't work for you, you want to switch platforms, those are situations where you probably need a rebuild, not just a refresh. You need to completely rebuild on a new site or a new platform. If your brand or your offers have fundamentally changed, you've done a full rebrand or you're planning to do a full rebrand, and what you actually are selling has changed pretty drastically, it's probably time for a rebuild because your site is probably structured around a business model that no longer exists for you. If your content and SEO need a brand new foundation, like you're generating just absolutely no content or no organic traffic, and you've got some of these other issues as well, a rebuild might be appropriate because the foundations of your website might be hurting your SEO, just like the way it was structured and built from the beginning. This often is the case if it was a DIY website. DIY websites are great when you're just getting started, but once you're ready for your business to scale, that DIY website could actually be holding you back. And then the last situation that might require a rebuild is if patching the current site and all of its problems is going to be more expensive than replacing it. If it's going to take more hours to fix what's wrong than it would be to just build something new, that doesn't make any sense at all. So you should probably think about a rebuild in that situation. All right, so now that we've talked a little bit about readiness, figuring out, okay, I'm ready for either a rebuild or a refresh. I know which direction I'm going in. Then it's time to start preparing. So let's talk a little bit about the process of figuring out your strategy, figuring out what content and assets you need, and all of the other decisions that your designer will need. So we're gonna do this, start off by doing a little test. So what I'm gonna have you do is to, if you're like Edward and you've got multiple businesses, you're gonna pick one website for this activity. Grace and Ashley, you guys can just go to Emerald's website and you're going to look at the homepage for 10 seconds. And in that 10 seconds, you're going to see if you can answer these 3 questions without scrolling. So just land on the homepage and see what you can observe. And those 3 questions are, is it immediately clear what you offer? Is it immediately clear who you help? And is there at least one obvious next step? So you're going to give yourself a point for each of those 3 things. So let's take 10 seconds. We're all going to pick a website to go to, one of your business websites, and we're just going to see, is it clear what you offer? Is it clear who you offer it to? And is there a clear next step? Awesome. All right. So Edward shared his website in the chat here. And I'm taking a look at your website, Edward. All right. So I would love, first, before I tell you what my assessment is, I would love if everyone would drop their score in the chat. How many questions did you answer yes to? Give yourself a point for each one you said yes to. Ashley gives Emerald's website a 3 out of 3. Love. Perfect.
I'll give myself 2.
A 2? Okay. Which of the 3 questions did you not give yourself a point for?
The next step, though it's hidden, if you read the details, probably you can guess, but I think it's not too clear what the next step is.
To me, I do feel like your next step is clear. So I'm looking at your website right now. And the first thing that your website says is the gateway between Ohio and Africa. BAE is a Columbus-based 501c3 nonprofit building the bridge between 2 places we call home, advancing trade, investment, education, tourism, innovation, and cultural diplomacy that create shared prosperity on both sides. And then your call to action is our mission. So if I want to learn more about you, I can do that. That's a good secondary call to action, or partner with us. The thing that I'm unclear about that I would not give you a point for is, who is your audience? So as a nonprofit, are you trying to attract businesses? Like how would you describe who your audience is?
That's a very good question. My audience, I would say businesses, NGOs, and government agencies
Okay.
between Ohio and then Africa countries.
Got
So
it.
we
So
try to do exchange programs with universities, with the cities, and stuff like that. Organize trip among residents of Ohio who want to visit some parts of Africa and stuff like that. Yeah. So I'm not too clear if what I think my audience is correct.
I think that a really easy fix for your homepage here would be to say, we build the bridge between businesses and government in Africa and in Ohio. Like I would just say somewhere in that intro paragraph that you work with businesses and government entities to
Okay.
just to make it a little bit more clear.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep. Yeah, for sure. All right. So this is a great activity because this activity will help you understand a few things. It'll help you to understand like what all assets you really need to be thinking about and what exactly your strategy should be as you're thinking about a rebuild or a refresh. So that 10-second test should tell us who is the site trying to attract. So for you, Edward, adding businesses and government entities and where they're located, that would check that box. So your website should be very clear about who you're trying to attract. What do you need them to understand about you? So you, in addition to mentioning who your audience is, want to make sure that they understand what problem you can actually solve for them, and then what's the most valuable action they can take. I think for a nonprofit, having a secondary call to action to explore your mission or learn a little bit about your impact, that's great. You should have that because a lot of people are skeptical of nonprofits. Unfortunately, there's some people that are bad actors in the nonprofit space. So being able to demonstrate that you are trustworthy is great. And then also if they're ready to take the next step and become a partner, that option is there too. Understanding these 3 questions before you start your website project helps determine pretty much everything for the entire project. So it's really important that you as the business owner understands who the site's trying to attract, what they need to understand about your services and what you want them to do. That's pretty crucial. So that's the first step. Once you've figured out those 3 questions, then you're going to be able to create what's called a project brief. Anytime you're soliciting services from an outside contractor or even giving like a special project to someone on your own team, it's best to have some type of project brief as the person who's initiating the project with the vision. So before you start soliciting requests for proposals or interviewing web designers, you're going to want to create a project brief that defines a few things. Number 1 is your business goal. What is it that you're hoping that the website refresh or redesign is going to achieve for you? Are you hoping it'll generate leads? Are you hoping to get donations? Are you just hoping to generate awareness and maybe build up an email list? Having a clear vision is going to help your designer to achieve that goal for you. Number 2 is your primary audience. A lot of nonprofits have multiple audiences. So a lot of times we find that there's 3 primary audiences for a nonprofit. Number 1 is the people they serve. Number 2 can be a lot of times like businesses or corporate partners that they're trying to get to donate to them or to help them offer services. And then number 3, a lot of times it can be like individual donors or, just trying to like build up a good reputation. Maybe they're trying to attract potential employees, or maybe they're trying to attract, some like attention for PR or something. So a lot of nonprofits have multiple audiences. Most businesses, though, have one primary audience. And so you really want to have a clear understanding if you're for profit, who that primary audience is. You have to understand what your core offers are. It is so difficult as a marketing agency to help a business that does not understand what it is that they're trying to sell or promote. So if you're at a point in your business where you're starting to evolve and transition, and you're not really quite sure, what type of offerings you're trying to attract people to, take some time to figure that out before you start your web design project. Your web designer really needs to understand what your core offerings are. And that's something that you as the business has to really work to figure out first. Your primary priority action. What is it that you hope your visitor does next? Should they book a call? Should they make a purchase? Do you want them to sign up for some type of email list? Do you want them to donate? Having a clear idea of what that priority action is essential. In order for your web designer to create a website that funnels people to do whatever that action is. Have an understanding of what you want your website to achieve. Yes, websites usually have forms and blogs. Some websites need scheduling capabilities. Some websites need e-commerce capabilities or membership portals or third-party integrations. So you need to include these things in your brief because not every designer is going to be able to do all of those things. So you want to make sure it's really clear what are all the functions you want the website to be able to do. And then have a clear understanding of your success measures. These should be directly connected to your business goals. All right, so once you have had a chance to create some type of brief that just outlines all of these different goals, then it's time to start gathering assets. So what is it that your web designer or your agency really needs from you before the build process can start? It's quite a lot, actually. So, one of the advantages before we go through this list of working with an agency is that an agency usually has a larger team of people who are able to check a lot of these things off the list for you as part of the project. If you wanted to maybe work with somebody who's less expensive, that might be a freelancer or a solo designer, sometimes they offer one or two of these things. A lot of web designers also do branding. Some web designers will help with copywriting. But for the most part, if you're working with a freelancer or a solo designer, they really are just focused on design, and you're going to have to bring these things to your designer ahead of time. So what are all the things that your web designer needs before design can start? Number one is copy. You've got to have the content that you want, the verbiage that goes on the website before you build. A lot of people will ask us, well, do we design the site first and then put the content after the design, or do we write and then design around the content? Design around the content. There's really no SEO advantage or any other type of advantage to designing first and then plugging in copy around the design. If you want a site that is discoverable in search, you really want to write that website copy first. The next thing that you need to bring to the table when you're ready for website design is branding. You should already have an understanding of what your colors are, what your fonts are. You should have a logo that's already created. If you're a brand new business, or maybe you hate your branding, then you should work with a web designer or an agency who can help you rebrand as part of the project. Case studies and testimonials are a must-have. Everybody is skeptical of everybody in 2026. If you make a claim, you have to have proof. You can't just say, like my marketing agency can't just say, hey, we're really good at SEO. Man, every single person that thinks about working with us says, do you have case studies? Do you have testimonials? Can we talk to some of your previous customers? So you better have that stuff on hand on your website for people to see. So creating some case studies, asking customers for some testimonials, that's something you should do before you start the web design process. Getting photography and video. Original photography is 100% worth investing in. Using stock photos, that does not build trust with people. People can recognize a stock photo. People want to see who they're working with. They want to see examples of your work. They want to see examples of your products. So having original photography and or video is really important. Making sure that you've got access to where your domain is hosted, to your DNS records. This is essential. If someone builds you a website but then can't connect your domain or your DNS records to the website, no one's going to be able to go there. So that domain that you own, your web designer needs to be able to access wherever that domain is hosted in order to redirect the people that visit that domain from your old site to your new site. So you want to make sure you've got logins your current platform logins as well. So in case they need to set up redirects is really important. So you got to have all your logins. You should have a plan for when someone submits a form or makes a purchase. Where does that information go? Who on your team receives that information? If it's you, then you should say that in your project brief. You should say when you set up the form, it needs to go to this email. So have an idea of where all of your forms go once people submit them. If you want your website to have functions like scheduling or payment systems, you should already have an idea of what you want those scheduling or payment systems to be. Are you using Acuity or Calendly to allow people to schedule? Do you want to use Stripe to process payments? How are you processing payments if that's something you want your site to do? That's information you want to be able to tell your web designer. And then this is the most important one, having one empowered decision maker as opposed to a huge team of people trying to make decisions together. If you have more than one person doing approvals throughout the process of a website project, you're only going to slow yourself down. It's already a really long process. Typically, even a small website can take 4 to 6 weeks. So having one empowered decision maker so that you're not bogging yourself down with multiple stages of approval is going to help the whole project go a lot smoother. So you got to pick one person who's empowered to make decisions. All right, so you've gathered all of your assets. As you're going through this process, I just wanted to call out a few mistakes that we've seen friends and clients make along the way so that you don't make these mistakes. So let's learn from the past here. Mistake number 1, do not wait until design is in motion to discover you don't have your logins to stuff. Gather all of those logins in a document before you hire a designer so that you don't have to waste time trying to search for these logins. Just provide that stuff up front. Be wary of agencies that offer to host a site for you. If that agency hosts the site for you, you're going to be in a chokehold with that agency. You guys are going to be married to each other, basically, whether you want to be or not. It's a big pain in the butt to try and reclaim ownership over that hosting when you're ready to leave an agency. We've seen it happen to lots of clients that are ready to switch agencies, and they're like, uh-oh, our agency's not cooperating. We're having a really hard time getting access to these assets. So we recommend third-party hosting. Use like Squarespace can host your domain. SiteGround, GoDaddy, these are all places that you can host in a third-party neutral space without letting an agency keep a chokehold over you forever. As far as photography and visuals, you could build a text-heavy website, but it's not going to be very engaging. And a lot of people are not going to want to spend a lot of time there. The more engaging visuals, photos, videos that you have, the better. So it is worth investing in a brand photo shoot where you get 30 to 50 photos, depending on the size of your site, so that you do not have to rely on stock photos. It makes all the difference to have nice photos in design. We talked about this, don't involve more than 1, maybe 2 people if it's really important to have that second person in there in the approval process. And don't wait to start a website project until you've got a big event coming up, because something will inevitably come up. What's the law called? Ash, there's like a certain law where if it can go wrong, it will go wrong. I'm going to have to look this up.
Oh, is it Murphy's Law? Let me look it up.
Murphy's Law. If it can go wrong, it will go wrong. Yes. So if you wait until the last second to start your website project, I promise you something will go wrong.
It always does. Always
does. So don't wait. 6 to 12 months ahead of time. That's a great time period for a website project, because ideally, if you work with a good agency, it'll get finished well before 6 to 12 months. But you never know, especially if it's a big website project, what can happen. So some mistakes to avoid. And then finally, as you're preparing, you're going to want to already have an understanding of which platform is the best for you. There's a few different platforms out there that are really popular. One of which is not on here is called Showit. So I kind of put Showit and Webflow in the same bucket. So I want to just quickly touch on what are some of the pros and cons of each website. Squarespace is probably the best website if you are a small business. You've got a team of under 20 people, and you are offering especially service-based business. You're offering services. you probably would be very happy on Squarespace. This is a great place for you to showcase portfolios or showcase different service lines that you offer. It's very polished. If you work with an experienced designer, it can be stunningly beautiful. Squarespace hosts everything for you, so you don't have to have 20 logins to a bunch of different things. All your DNS, your domain, everything can be hosted through one login on Squarespace, which is really nice for a small business owner. And the best part is that it's easy to edit. So unlike WordPress, which you run into a lot of issues if you're trying to edit it yourself, Squarespace is very intuitive. It's got drag and drop features. It's really easy to upload assets and change photos and things like that. So I would say for 90% of small businesses that especially are service-based, or even just offer maybe e-commerce, but you've got a small catalog of products, Squarespace is probably the place to be for you. If you are publishing a lot of content, I'm talking like you're going to have hundreds of pages, and you need some highly customized things happening on your website. Maybe you need a very highly customizable member portal. Maybe you need some different widgets and things that are really specific. You need a certain plugin. WordPress might be the answer for you. WordPress is great for larger corporate types of businesses. We're talking businesses that have like over 100 employees, or like I said, you're just publishing hundreds of pages. That is going to bog down the speed of your site. And the cool thing about WordPress is that you can download plugins that help with speed. And so WordPress is great if you've got a really large site or you need something to be highly customizable. For most small businesses, though, you do not need WordPress. If you are an e-commerce business, Shopify is probably going to be the place for you. It is built for e-commerce. So if you're selling products that you literally like ship to people, Shopify is great because it helps you keep track of all of your shipping stuff. It'll figure out like your sales taxes for you. You can keep track of all of your inventory in Shopify. It is complicated. I will say, like WordPress, Shopify is a little bit less intuitive. You will probably have to work with a designer or a builder to make most of your updates, unless you are like an extremely tech savvy business owner. So that's when Shopify would be best. Now, we do have some clients that are on Wix. We find that it is a little bit more complicated, I think, than what they advertise themselves to be. Wix advertises itself to be like really user-friendly. And we've worked on all of these different types of platforms. I will tell you, Wix is not as user-friendly as Squarespace. It's not as complicated as WordPress. So it's kind of somewhere in the middle. There's nothing really that stands out about Wix. Besides, they do have some deeper analytic functions than Squarespace. However, that's easy to fix if you just connect your website to like Google Analytics or Google Search Console. You'll get the same, if not better, levels of analytics. Wix also has some business functionality on the back end that Squarespace does not have. But it can get a little bit messy. Wix can get really messy, and it's known not to have the best SEO. If SEO is something that's important to you, Shopify, WordPress, or Squarespace is going to be best. With Webflow and with Showit, the thing about those is they can look really nice, but you will have to find a specialized designer who works on those platforms. They're less common. And so you're going to have to find someone who specializes in Webflow or in Showit in order to maintain your site and make updates. So again, I would say for 90% of small businesses, Squarespace is probably going to be the best for you. If you're e-commerce, then Shopify might be a better fit. So before you hire a designer, know which platform you want. Otherwise, the designer or agency you pick is going to pick the platform that's convenient for them. Who cares what's convenient for them? You want to pick something that's convenient for you. All right. So once you have figured out what are all the things that you need to prepare, you've gathered all of your copywriting, your photos, you've planned out the strategy of the website, it's time to start thinking about the investment. This is the biggest question we get. How much is it going to cost? And the answer is, it depends. So let's talk a little bit about what affects the price of a scope for website design. So scope of work is just a word that means like what all is included. And so price is determined by a few different things. Some things affect the price more than others. The biggest things that are going to affect the price of a website rebuild or refresh, number one is the size. The size of your website, the number and type of pages, of course, is going to determine how long it takes your designer. So that is the number one thing that's going to affect the cost of your site, is how many pages are you building, and what are the size and the functionality of those pages. The second thing that affects the cost of a site are the assets that you are bringing to the table versus what you need your agency or your designer to do for you. So if you need your agency or your designer to develop your brand visually, if you need photography or video production or illustrations, those things are going to add to the cost. So if you can come to the table with those things already done, then that's going to remove a pretty significant piece of the cost from the table. However, if you need help with those things, allow an agency to include that in the scope of your proposal, because it can be really great to get a professional brand developed and get those professional photos done if you need them. And then the last biggest thing that affects the cost is the functionality. If you need something like a member portal that is custom and it's got custom content on there, if you've got a large e-commerce store where you're selling, dozens or hundreds or thousands of products, that's going to significantly increase the cost, because building all of those product pages is going to add to the time that it takes for somebody to build the site. So they're going to charge for that. If you need complex scheduling or forms on your website, those are things that are also going to add to the cost, because sometimes they require custom coding. And so any functionality you need that requires custom coding, or you need a plugin built or something like that, that's going to significantly affect the cost of your website refresh or redesign. Some things that do affect the cost, but a little bit less. One important thing is design. A lot of designers or agencies will ask you, do you want us to adapt a pre-existing template, which is less expensive? Or do you want custom art direction? Maybe you've got a really specific vision and you want them to give you something completely custom. That's going to cost more than if you're just using a template. If you need your agency to write your content for your website for you, a lot of people make the mistake of thinking, oh, well, I'll just tell the web designer about my business, and then as part of designing the site, they'll write the site for me too. That is a completely separate project from web design. And so, if you also need somebody to write the content for you and do some of the SEO, which should include research and competitor research and keyword research, that is going to add to the cost. And then, of course, the complexity. If you've got a lot of stakeholders, and that usually means that you're doing lots of rounds of approvals because you're getting lots of feedback, that is going to add to the cost, because if you go over the allotted number of rounds of approvals, your agency or your designer is going to charge for that. So usually every website project comes with 2 to 3 rounds of revisions. If you go over that number, they're going to charge you. If you need a significant number of redirects or migrated content, a lot of times if you've got a blog with a lot of content and you need all of that migrated over, that is going to add to the cost. If your website needs special accessibility features, for example, you need your website to show in multiple languages, or you need your website to be accessible to folks with visual or hearing impairments, sometimes that can add to the cost depending on what the accessibility feature is that you're looking for. And then lastly is project management. A lot of agencies do not provide complimentary project managers, which means you are going to be the project manager, and it's going to consume a lot of your time. Some agencies offer project management for a fee. And so when you look closely at the proposal, you'll see a project manager is included, but they're charging an extra $1,500 or something crazy for a project manager. Some agencies like Emerald come with a project manager. That would be me. I manage all of our website projects, and we do not include a project management fee. So that alleviates some of the stress from the business owner so that they don't have to micromanage the whole thing. So when you're comparing quotes and you're looking at the full scope of the project, just keep in mind, what all is included. Look at outcomes, look at scope. Don't just look at the totals, because some agencies and designers will include some of these things and some won't. So just something to be aware of. And if you think about all these things, you'll avoid some expensive mistakes. The most expensive mistake you could make is, well, I thought that was included. And then all of a sudden you're getting hit with all these extra fees and all of this extra stuff that you owe. Or worse, you're saying, I don't want to pay for it, and now it's just not done. So now your website project is held up while you figure out how to write the content, or you find all of the logins, or you get photos done, or whatever it is. So don't make the expensive mistake of assuming that anything is included, because it might not be, and it probably isn't. So read that proposal and read that scope of work really, really closely. As far as timeline, it really depends on the size of your project and what platform you're building on. Most of the websites that we build here at Emerald take anywhere between 4 to 8 weeks, depending on how quickly we can move through some of the milestones. We've worked with businesses that approve everything on the first pass, and we get that website built and launched within a month. We've worked with other businesses where getting anything approved is a struggle. It's like pulling teeth. And so something that was supposed to take 8 weeks turns into 16 weeks. And it really just depends on your own internal processes. So the best thing you can do to make sure that the timeline stays consistent and you get it done in a healthy amount of time is to make sure that you are giving feedback in an expeditious and speedy way. And don't feel like you need to micromanage every single little decision. Just give that feedback, and know anything on your site can be adjusted later. So if your priority is just to get the thing launched and then you can go back and refine later, do that, just approve things. If you see something really egregious or that feels really off brand, of course, tell your web designer. That's something that should be fixed before you launch. The most time consuming phase of any website project is the strategy, the preparation, planning the project, gathering all the assets, choosing who to hire, getting onboarded. That should be the most time consuming part of all. Once you get into actually designing and building, that should be speedy. Launching should be speedy. So just keep this in mind. The more you prepare, the less time it's going to take to get the website built and launched. So the more prepared you can be, the faster you can get it done. Some common reasons for delays. Sometimes I hear, what are you waiting on from me again? And it's like, man, just have some type of project management system, be organized. The more organized everybody is, the less we're going to run into situations where there's delays. So forgetting or delaying feedback is the #1 reason why website projects end up going over the initial timeline. This can sometimes happen when there's too many voices with irrelevant opinions. And yes, you are going to hear opinions from people during your website project that are irrelevant. So tune them out. Not every single opinion that people have throughout the project is relevant to the outcome. Lack of approval to move forward to the next step. That's going to delay things. Delayed asset pass off. If your web designer says, hey, I need something from you, get it to them as quickly as possible. And again, the more prepared you are before you go into the website redesign project, the less your web designer is going to be bugging you for stuff. So, get whatever they're saying they need over to them as soon as possible. And again, make sure you've got those logins to wherever your website is hosted into the back end of your current site. Again, some tips: one final decision maker on your website project. You do not need more than one final decision maker to make little decisions along the way. Have a single content owner and a single content folder where all of your assets, like your photos, your copywriting, everything is stored, so that you're not looking around in a bunch of different places for stuff. And then have your own internal process for feedback. While you're building a project, ask your web designer, hey, can we do milestone meetings once a week or once every other week, so that you've got a designated time in your week where okay, I'm going to be going in and looking at stuff and dedicating time to this project. So those are some of my tips for avoiding delays. Once you have gathered all of your assets and you've done everything you need to do as far as preparing for the project, it is time to move into the final phase, which is finding the right partner fit. And the best way to find the right partner is ask really good questions, almost like you're interviewing a potential employee. So you got to kind of treat it like that. So here are some of my tips for finding the right partner. Redesigns can help or hurt your search engine optimization depending on the expertise of your partner. So you might hire someone who does really gorgeous design. There's a lot of really talented designers that will do stunning art direction. Everything will look really, really beautiful and unique. But then on the back end of the site, it's loading really slowly. There's a bunch of broken links. Things aren't working correctly. You can't get discovered in search. So you need to find a designer who understands SEO and who understands the technical components of a website. Otherwise, you risk a lot. You risk losing credibility in rankings with Google. You risk losing out on potential customers to competitors who might not have a site that's as pretty, but it's more discoverable in search. Some agencies, they're rare, but they're out there, can do both. They can create something really beautiful that is also super functional and discoverable in search. That is what our agency is known for. So as you're interviewing some different agencies, make sure that you're not just looking at how beautiful the sites are, but also asking, hey, tell me about your SEO knowledge. How would you approach redirects for links? How do you approach keyword research? What are some of the things you do for SEO? Hello, hello. I see someone in the chat. Welcome. Glad to have you here. And then keep in mind that design quality is relative. Something that looks really beautiful to you might not look really beautiful to your audience. So rather than just picking a designer who appeals to your personal taste, you have to think about what appeals to your audience. That's something that we are thinking more about here with our own brand. Is, when we first started, our brand was like really, really edgy. And we've sort of learned, our target audience isn't necessarily someone who cares a lot about edginess. Some people definitely want their brand to look unique and appreciate the unique look. But they want someone who's trustworthy, someone who, can deal with a little bit more of a corporate type project. And so that's a shift that we've had to make. So yeah, that's just something to keep in mind as you're picking a designer. And then ask better questions. You need to ask some questions about 3 different categories. Number 1 is reputation. Do you have a portfolio of projects? Can you please connect me with 2 to 3 clients so I can ask them about their experience? Have you ever started a project you couldn't finish? You have to evaluate the reputation of the business. Number 2, ask about strategy and process. Who writes content for the website? Is it me? Are you expecting me to give you the content, or should I give that to you? What's your SEO strategy? Tell me about how feedback and revisions are handled. And more importantly, now than ever, is do you use AI in the design and build process? The thing that you should watch out for when it comes to this is if someone's using AI to build your site, the code on the back end of your site is going to be really, really messy, most likely. And it's going to be very difficult to edit the site later. So if you're using somebody who says, yeah, I use AI to build the sites, that might be a red flag. Just something to keep in mind. And then asking about ownership and support. Who owns the domain where the site is hosted? Is it me or is it you? It should be you, the business owner, not the agency. What fees are associated with this platform? Every platform is going to charge fees. So you need to understand what the ongoing cost is for the platform that you pick. Are you going to train me? Is there training included? We include a 1-hour training session as part of our offboarding for every website project where we teach the businesses, either the business owner or whoever's managing the site, all the things that they need to know about maintaining the site. And then ask about support after launch. Don't assume that your web designer or your agency is going to be available to support you after launch for free. They might be there, but they might charge you for it. There's a few red flags. Of course, any type of pressure that anyone's putting on you, you don't want to work with an agency or designer that's pressuring you without a business reason. If they're saying, hey, listen, I've only got 1 slot left for this month, that would be a business reason. If they're saying you need to act now, but there's no good reason, that's a red flag. If the conversation's only about visual preferences, that's a red flag. You want a designer who understands the technical side of things as well. If there's no clear process, if they can't say, hey, here's the different steps of my process, they're probably disorganized. So you probably don't want to work with them. If the scope uses really vague terminology, like maybe it says something like SEO is included, but it doesn't actually say what is that keyword research? Is that just technical SEO? Push on that to make sure that they understand what that means. Ownership and access, of course, we've talked about that. You don't want an agency that owns your website. You want to own your own website, your own domain. If the agency or designer will not meet with you over at least a video call, they want to be anonymous, that's weird. Don't work with that person. They're hiding something. Your web designer or agency should either meet with you over video call or in person at the very least. If they won't provide introductions to past clients, that's weird. If you ask, hey, can you connect me with some previous clients? And they say no, run in the other direction. That's weird. If they use an unidentifiable subcontractor, I've got a little typo there. It says subcontractor, it should say sub. If they won't tell you who's actually doing the work, that's weird. That's a red flag. Don't use them. If they don't give you a contract or service agreement, there's no protection for anyone. There's no protection for you. There's no protection for them. That's a red flag. Don't do it. Poor communication from the start, wrong. They're eliminated. They're not responding to emails quickly. They're not giving you information or answering your calls or anything. They got to go. That's a bad way to start a project. If they won't give you at least an estimate or like a final price, assuming the scope doesn't change, that's weird. They should tell you how much it costs before you start. If there's little to no consumer protections when you work with someone offshore. So if you're thinking of working with someone offshore, just know if they steal your money and don't deliver, there's literally nothing you can do about it. There's no consumer protection. So, and then we talked about AI. So you don't want to work with someone that uses AI to build your site because it's not going to be helpful. Here's a little tip for the next 30 days. Week 1, you should be spending the first week just diagnosing your situation, figuring out, do I need a refresh? Do I want to stay on the platform I'm on? Or do I need a rebuild? Maybe I want to move platforms, or I want to start over fresh because my business has changed a lot. And identify in this diagnosing process, like, what is the business constraint that's holding you back? Is it discoverability? People can't find your site. Is it that people get there and then they don't convert? Like, what's the problem? Week 2, start defining what are the next steps? Start defining your goals. What's your business goal? Are you trying to generate revenue or leads? Who's your audience? What's the offer you're pushing? What's the action you want people to take? What are the requirements and functionalities of your website? These are things that you want to start defining in week 2. Week 3, start preparing, start gathering all of your assets, build a content inventory of photos, of content and copy. Figure out what you want your budget to be, figure out who the key decision maker is in the project. And then in week 4, you'll be ready to start interviewing folks. Choose 2 to 3 or even more agencies. We recently started working with a client who said he interviewed, what was it, Grace, like 27 different agencies or something before he picked us. And I was like, good for you. Like, I'm glad to hear that we stood out. But yeah, you should definitely interview. It's kind of like dating, right? You're not just going to pick the first person you find. You got to explore some different options. And then ask to talk with previous clients, or at least look at case studies and examples, especially if it's someone you're not familiar with. If it's just someone you randomly found online, you got to see some examples. So, all right, let's get into FAQs. I want to start with some of the FAQs that I see in the chat here. I see, Amanda, do you have a recommendation for project management tool? Ashley, tell us about Asana. We love Asana.
Yeah, the paid version is what we use. I don't know if they have a free trial version or not, but it's great because you can tag different people with tasks and throw in your deadlines. You can also put the documents that you're working on within Asana. So it's nice to have that to be central for everybody. You can put budgets and things like that, costs, all of it. So it's a very comprehensive system that's worked well for us thus far. If you are kind of just starting out, I'm not sure how far along you are in your business, but we actually just started with an Excel spreadsheet, and that worked really well for a while because you can do those same things, just create your columns of, all the different categories and things that you want to be keeping track of throughout the length of a project. So that's a good free version as well, but Asana is our preferred tool at this time. So
we love Asana. It's a great one. Thanks, Ash. Okay, which should come first, copy or design? Always your copy, the content that's going on the website. You should write that first and then design around your messaging. Should I design for personal taste or my audience? Of course, your audience, right? Your audience is funding your business. So you want it to appeal to them, not just your own personal taste. Why shouldn't I let my whole team give me feedback? Well, because it's going to hold your project up. Remember, not every opinion is a relevant opinion. So having one decision maker is going to keep things moving smoothly. I have a meeting scheduled with a VPN. What should I ask them regarding securing the privacy of my data and the data of my clients? Data security is a big concern these days, for sure. If you are working with a reputable platform like Squarespace, They do a really good job of cybersecurity. Knock on wood, we have never had a cybersecurity situation with a Squarespace client. We've had many with WordPress clients. So, ask them, if you are on a WordPress site and you're storing client data there, how do you secure, client data if I'm on a WordPress site? I would suggest consulting with a cybersecurity firm. If you are a Mac-based business, we recommend Wild Frog Consulting. They're an excellent cybersecurity firm that's local here in Columbus, Ohio. And then I'm not familiar with any that are PC-based, but I would consult with a firm if you are very concerned about client data, especially if you are like a law firm or in a HIPAA-regulated industry. Rebranding or updating an existing website. That was the whole question. I think this person is asking, like, if I'm just rebranding or updating, like, can I do that to an existing site? Yeah, you don't have to rebuild to a completely new site. You could rebrand or just update your current site. As long as you work with somebody who knows what they're doing, that's going to be able to get you results. That should be fine. And then the importance of owning your own domain and web space. So important. Do not let an agency host your site for you. They're going to make it sound good. It's not good, right? That's like, a wolf dressed up in sheep's clothing, really. It's not a best practice. You should own all of that stuff yourself. So, all right. Well, we've come to the end of our session. I know we went over a little bit. We got started a little later, so thanks for hanging in there. For anyone that's here today, if you want a thought partner to kind of think through what your next steps are and help you through those 4 phases, figuring out what you need to do, we are offering you a free website audit. So you can either scan this QR code or visit calendly.com/emeraldcontent and select free SEO audit. And we will help you figure out what it is that you need to do to take the next step. So thank you so much, everybody, for joining us today. And I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. And we'll see you guys later. Bye, everybody.
Are you going to share the slides with us? Oh, I actually came late.